We are joined on this episode by a filmmaker whose latest feature, The Breach, is available now on demand through the likes of iTunes, Amazon, and Vudu, as well as via Hoopla. The gentleman is also a founding editor and publisher and president still of the popular horror magazine, website, outlet, brand, production house, Rue Morgue. He is Rodrigo Gudiño. Rodrigo, thank you so much for joining us on the program here.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, we're happy to talk to you about that more.
I actually wanted to kick things off, Rodrigo, and kind of go back to sort of your origins a little bit and ask, like, what really gave you the bug? And when I say the bug, I'm talking about an interest in film, in horror, in filmmaking, obviously. Was there like a person or a movie or any kind of like particular thing at a young age that really got you hooked on this stuff?
That's a great question, and I wish I could give you an answer, a very specific answer. I can give you a very specific answer for other things, like, for example, when and where I came up with the idea for Rue Morgue magazine. I remember the exact spot and time and everything. But in terms of a sort of like or desire to explore the genre more generally in film and so on, that was, that came piecemeal over the course of my childhood, really. I grew up in Baja California near Tijuana, actually, in Playas de Tijuana, which is it's sort of right on the water there, right on the Pacific. And there was, as you might have heard, Tijuana is a pretty crazy place. And although I wasn't in the city proper, there was like some spillover of some stuff. And I ended up seeing some pretty, I guess you could say, tragic things when I was quite young. I don't know if that contributed to my sort of interest in the macabre. I don't think so, but it comes up a lot in interviews over the years, so that's why I kind of mention it. I do remember looking at the paintings of Gustave Doré when I was quite young, and always being attracted to horror imagery. And it was a very strange thing because I was terrified of it, but I was also very drawn to it. So there was always that push and pull happening all through my youth. And it was only till much later, I guess I was in my 20s, and I had left university when I kind of when I saw some opportunity to create essentially a magazine around it. And in terms of filmmaking, I don't know. I think it was Stanley Kubrick who first I became aware of the camera watching his movies and of the filmmaker. So his movies are very deliberately staged and composed visually. And I think that's the very first time I was in my teenage years where I was like, oh, there's this camera. He's moving in a certain way. He's telling the story in this very deliberate way. And that's when the thought first entered my mind that, hey, I'd love to make a movie someday. But it was really just like that. I just like to make a movie someday. Yeah, I guess I just didn't let go of that dream. And over time, I was able to make it a reality.
So when you mentioned university, did you pursue anything in the arts as far as a major, or was that just something you were doing just because you're supposed to do that with business and you still had the thought?
Right. In university, I had a degree in literary studies and philosophy. So that's what I was studying. It was mainly more literary. I kind of came into the world of Rue Morgue more from actually I shouldn't say the world of Rue Morgue. I was in the music business for a little while before Rue Morgue. I was news and music editor at RPM magazine, which is the Canadian Billboard essentially, or was at that time. And I was coming into that from a very literary perspective. So for coming out of university, I was very steeped in literature. But on the side, I obviously had watched a lot of movies. And in my teenage years, particularly when I was 17 to, I want to say 20, I pretty much watched almost all horror films, or a lot of them. I would say like 80% or something. And I read a lot of genre literature, like classic genre literature, like Lovecraft and Stephen King and like Le Fanu and people like that.
So it sounds like the merging of the two loves, the genre and the horror stuff, and the literary is how you kind of launched Rue Morgue, I assume. Were your hopes, dreams, aspirations for it purely to promote horror, or were you hoping it to one day turn into a production house or something else even?
Yeah, well, I have to say that my motivations launching Rue Morgue were intellectual and commercial. So basically, I saw back to that story of where exactly it happened. I had walked into I had been watching all these horror movies. I was doing this project of watching all the most important horror movies from the dawn of cinema to the 1980s. So I was doing that with a few friends, and I had the genre in my mind a lot. And I think it was I had walked into this store and I saw all this paraphernalia, like just Halloween paraphernalia and stuff. And there was DVDs and movies, and there was some clothing and buttons and whatever. And obviously, at that time I was in the music business, and the music of, like Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson and all these dark, very, Skinny Puppy and all that was kind of becoming more and more of a thing. And I just had this thought that, this idea of a magazine that did culture as well as entertainment. At that time, all the magazines that I knew, which would have been Fangoria, Famous Monsters of Filmland, they were very specific in their interests. So Fangoria was very much, effects in movies, like gore effects and, makeup effects and that whole thing. And Famous Monsters of Filmland was very nostalgia and sort of universal monster movies, and it was more kid driven. So I kind of saw this new magazine sort of like taking all of that and adding other things to it, and it being about horror and, the culture of horror and what people do, the art of horror in history that predates the actual genre and stuff. And I thought that this would be very intellectually stimulating to me personally, because I could discover the genre while I did it. I could kind of like explore it and also explore my own fascination with it. So it came from a very personal perspective, and I thought obviously, this is also economically viable because of this magazine, and speaking to all these facets of the horror genre, it can lure advertisers from all those facets, So it kind of came from that. And as if you look at the first issues of Rue Morgue, or the first few years, they were some of that stuff was quite academic. And over time, I just kind of smoothed that out, and it became sort of what it is today.
I was just going to say, one of the things is that it's expanded into all these other avenues as well. And the one thing in particular that stands out to me is, the Rue Morgue has an annual film festival, which Fright at the Falls, which happens in the Niagara area. And we know folks that, run film fests and work around them. And that's pretty much a full-time job in and of itself. So I was just curious, is that something that you kind of kicked off? Do you still run that, or do you have any kind of hand in that particular event annually?
So that's interesting, because when I started Rue Morgue, it was a magazine, but I obviously became interested in other avenues. And we created a radio show, we created a record label, we had a Festival of Fear, we did sort of a podcast before podcasts were anything. We were doing, what else did we did clothing line. We did all this stuff. And what ended up happening there is I became a bit over, I had my hands in everything. And I was kind of, I guess, overworked. I was I was spreading myself too thin. And of course, I wanted to make movies. So to answer your question, Rue Morgue still does obviously a lot of different things. I'm less involved in those things. I kind of oversee them. I oversee everything Rue Morgue, but I'm not on the ground, with the Frightmare in the Falls. I talked to David over there who runs it, and I just kind of, talk in a very general way, or I say, hey, try this guest or that. But generally, that thing just runs. He's sort of in charge of that. And ditto for some of the other things at Rue Morgue. Rue Morgue TV, I'm a little bit more involved with that. But really, it's more just overseeing everything at this point.
So you're able to actually attend the festival and enjoy it. That's what you're saying. You can have a little bit of a hand, but you could show up and kick back with everybody else and kind of enjoy it once in a while. All right. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
cool.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
No, good on you. I mean, this brand, no horror genre fan worth their salt doesn't know the brand Rue Morgue in some capacity, whether it's through TV, whether it's through a fest, whether it's through the magazine or the current. You guys are still reviewing stuff on the film website. So segue into that, speaking of, this is part of the reason we have you on, about you making some films. The Last Will and Testament of Rosalind Leigh is a big hit with several of our friends, including my own co-host, my usual co-host, Becky Sayers, and her partner. And you got Oscar winner Vanessa Redgrave in it, pull quotes from the likes of Clive Barker even. So after making, I know you've done handfuls of music videos, short films and all, but how much of a leap was it to finally jump in? And what kind of learning lesson was that first feature for you?
Well, the leap wasn't very much, because at that time, I think I made that movie in 2012. I think it was released in 2013. And, I had been making movies since 2006. That's to say short films and stuff. So it was very kind of natural evolution. The only thing is that particular movie wasn't what I was supposed to make, if that makes any sense. It was really, I was working on these other projects, and I had some sticks in the fire. And one day my producer called me up and said, hey, this funding body in Canada has like a bunch of money and they want to sort of hand out essentially. And do you have a script that's in this particular range? I think it was, I don't know, over $1 million, but. And I said, well, I have kind of like this short script, whatever. I guess I could balloon it out. He goes, well, can you write it fast? Because they want the script. So I think I took 14 days to write that script. And I sent it in. I'm not thinking anything was going to happen. And suddenly, well, it was like, oh, here's all the here's the money and shoot this movie. So I was a little bit. I hadn't sat with that material. I felt, as much as I would have liked to, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And, did I learn anything? I learned shitloads. A feature film is very, very different from a short film. Number one, it's very, very physically taxing. And, you have to kind of be in this production mode for weeks at a time, which is difficult to remain very creative. I think the other thing is that particular movie is a very kind of esoteric film. It's a very internal film. It's not, I think in retrospect, it wasn't the best movie to do first off. I think I would have been better off if I had done something a bit more in the genre, what people expected, which is what I was working on actually. But I'm happy with it. And, it certainly found its audience over the years. I still get mail over that movie. People definitely go down the rabbit hole with that for sure.
No, I can imagine. And just out of curiosity, I know it was a few years between features for you, but you'd mentioned Rue Morgue TV. Is that what kept you busy for the most part in the interim, besides running obviously kind of the greater Rue Morgue brand? Was it pivoting to TV in between that and The Breach?
Yes, that was a big part of it. The other part of it was I was working on a feature film that never took off. I was working with Slash on that. I was working with Mads Mikkelsen on it, and I had Harvey Keitel on there. And, we were kind of working on this thing. It took up a lot of time and energy. And unfortunately, it was a project that never got off the ground. So that was a big disappointment for me personally. But there were a few other things. I think I did a music video. There was Vincenzo Natali invited me on to his TV show, which was called Darknet, and I ended up directing the season closer for that. And and as well as all things Rue Morgue, So I was kept busy, but a lot of it, was this project that unfortunately never caught fire.
Well, very quickly, I mean, obviously, you've got a very diverse resume in terms of not only creating your own business and in a way, sort of an empire, but also with forays into television, music videos, short films, etc. I was really curious, though, with The Breach, because it's an adaptation of a novel that's written by Nick Cutter, who the readers out there are going to also recognize as the guy who wrote The Troop and Rusted Bone. But did you acquire the rights to this? Did this thing come to you, or was it like a straight up collaboration? Because not having read the book, I noticed that I kind of like just went right into the film right off the bat. And I wanted to know where this was going immediately. And I thought, it feels like this is a collaboration, but I feel like there's a story here. So I just want to know, how did this particular story come to you?
Right. Well, I was in Mexico here in Puerto Vallarta, where I'm living currently. It was really towards it was in the middle of the pandemic. I believe Canada was still mostly in lockdown. Here, it was a little bit relaxing, relaxed restrictions. And I got a call from Mike Pash, and he said, "Hey, we have this script. Do you want to look at it? We're thinking of shooting this. Want to know if you're interested." So I got this script. It was called Gone Up River at the time that I received it, and it was based on a book that hadn't been released, and the book was called Gone Up River. So I read the script quickly, and I liked it, but I proposed a bunch of changes, and thankfully, Mike and the Raven Banner team, as well as Craig, Nick Cutter and his writing partner there, Ian Weir, they were open to me making the changes. I made some changes and changed some characters around, and added a few added new characters. I kind of brought up the Lovecraftian element, and changed the title to The Breach, kind of introduced that concept. And the thing was that I didn't have a lot of time to really tinker with it, because from the time that I got the script, I believe, to the time I was shooting would have been maybe 8 weeks. So it was very, very quick. And I didn't have a chance to even read the book or anything, or really talk to Craig extensively about the story. It was really just kind of like, can I fix this story? And the script was a bit too big for the budget that they had. So I had to kind of do a bunch of problem solving on it. And that's sort of how it happened. Really, I think I got a story development credit there because of the changes that I made. But in general, it was just sort of handed to me. And then essentially something I had to fix and then get right down to shooting.
Got it. So with that quick turnaround, 8 weeks that sounds like just craziness to me, at least. So you get the script and changes are made and then cameras start rolling. What was this like filming in Canada at that time? With whatever restrictions they had, by the time you started rolling, what was it like to shoot in the middle of a pandemic? And of course, was financing kind of already on the table, or was that raised very quickly? I don't know. I feel like this is like a Pandora's box of questions to me, but I want to know so much more now. But yeah, the quick time turnaround sounds crazy. So I'll let you go. But I just was curious about the pandemic in particular, but also how quickly were you guys able to adapt to whatever changes you had to make?
Right. Yeah. When I received the script, I believe everything was in place. The finance was in place. They had not of the locations, but the general location, which was Parry Sound, a tiny town, a couple of hours north of Toronto. And shooting there would mean that the film would get some tax credits, etc. So there was a lot of stuff in place. Now, with respect to shooting during the pandemic, one of the things to realize is that, back then, most of the people who ended up working on that film had been in lockdown for a long, long time. That was their first sort of time that they were with anybody else, in a social situation after 6 months or whatever it was. And everybody was a little, everybody was ecstatic in a way to be out and doing stuff and being with people, Everybody sort of bubbled at this hotel. So once you did your quarantine, basically you could kind of come out and hang out. And that's kind of what we did. We were shooting, days, nights, and people would be, hanging around. We did movie nights. There was a big bonfire every night and people would go around there. There was a guitar, people were drinking. It was like feeling human again, feeling alive again. So all that was really positive. It was a really positive feeling and very, I want to say, healing feeling, So all my memories of shooting that movie were very strong and very positive. Now, the pandemic, of course, did create some challenges. One of the things that happened when I first arrived in Parry Sound was that there was nobody on the streets. And I thought, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to shoot wherever we want. And nobody's, it's going to be fantastic. But in fact, the opposite was true because you couldn't rent any public spaces. You couldn't shoot anywhere because you weren't allowed. So we had to basically rent private properties all over the place and deal with homeowners and basically property owners. And, that created a few things. I had to kind of reinvent a few scenes and I had to rethink them. I had to be very light on my feet on the day. Yeah, even the house, for example, the house in the movie, a lot of that house is sort of was created in a ballroom of the hotel we were staying in. And parts of the house were sort of like other places, other locations that we had found. So the house is kind of like an amalgam of I think 4 or 5 different locations. With respect to the boat, there's a part in the movie where the cast is the characters are going upriver to get to this house. I shot most of that in a parking lot, with a car pulling the boat, and I was running alongside the boat, directing the actors. And, then we kind of mixed that in with some drone shots of extras on a boat going upriver and blah, blah, blah. And we kind of created this whole thing and, sound design and so on and so forth. But yeah, it definitely created a bunch of challenges that we had to solve on the day.
And just as a quick follow up with obviously the challenges and things arising, what was the total time frame of the production schedule? And did that elongate things? Did it make anything shorter because you had to come up with creative solutions that ended up, I don't know, saving you a couple of days? Or did anything like that arise? Or I just was curious also how long it took to shoot the film.
I think the film shoot was around 23 days. I want to say. So relatively short. We lost a day here. We would lose time here. We would gain time there. I do remember that we came in very comfortably on the 23rd day. I think there was only one instance where we had to sort of had to send B unit to get a short scene that I wasn't there for. But other than that, everything worked out quite well. So we kept it, under budget essentially and on time. So it was good.
That'll keep them happy. So I want to go back to a couple things. You'd mentioned the famed Guns N' Roses guitarist Slash. He provides the film score here and is an executive producer as well. Did you bring him back into the fold after that aforementioned feature had fallen through? Or were you always in touch with him after that and hopes to work with him again?
Yeah, we'd met back in 2013, and the last film, Testament of Rosalind Leigh, had just come out, and Slash had just released his movie called Nothing Left to Fear. So we met and stuff. He came up for the Festival of Fear, I think it was at that time, and then we started working on this other feature, and of course that didn't happen. But we kept in touch here and there, And then when this came up, it was just a matter of dropping him a line. He wanted to see the script, obviously. He liked it. He was kind of floored that we were going to be shooting so during the time of essentially it was still the time of COVID. So I think he wanted to really support that. And he was rehearsing for this huge Guns N' Roses tour, this enormous thing. And he had I think 4 weeks before the tour started, and he was like, "Hey man, I'll write some music for it." I said, "Dude, let's do it." So we talked in general about it, the script in terms of what sounds, what kind of music it would have. And then I started, I would send him certain scenes, and have him start coming up with some music for those. So that's kind of how we did it.
Yeah. And I said to Blake off air before we got on with you, the music gave me a little bit of a John Carpenter vibe, and I mean that in the highest compliment. So yeah, it definitely helps with the atmosphere. I dig it a lot.
That's great. Yeah, I should note that Slash did write and record a bunch of music for the movie, but once he had to get on to his tour, he was gone, and I still had some holes to fill. And I worked with a musician, a friend of mine. His name is James Zirko Fisher, and he created a bunch of music had a bunch of music that I ended up using for the film as well. Slash worked with a guy by the name of Bars Alte, who actually did the opening credits for Rosalind LEIGH. And he, I put them together because I was looking for something very specific, and Slash was open to working with somebody, and so they came up with that whole opening theme of the movie.
Speaking of that opening theme, while I was watching the opening credits, I was pleasantly surprised to see another musician's name in there that I recognized immediately and had to double check very quick. I paused and had to check IMDb because I was like, wait a minute, is this who I think it is? And Rush's Alex Lifeson is in the film. And I'm a huge Rush fan. I actually texted Sean, sent him a text like how excited I was that he was in the film. And I couldn't wait to see what part he had to play. But I was really curious, like, how did he get involved? And also, did you guys just like set up a camera for him at home so it looked like he was on Zoom? Like, did he come to a sound stage of some kind? Like, I had so many questions because I don't see him in a whole lot of stuff because I live in the States. So, I mean, seeing him on a screen and not playing a guitar was a bit of a shock, but in a good way. Yeah. Like I was like, wow, this is a turn. And I was just, I loved like how his character kind of fit into the paradigm of the film. So yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about how he got involved and all that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. That character was someone I ended up writing into the script. I felt the script needed a bit of levity, and also I wanted a character to kind of vocalize certain ideas that I thought would be interesting for the audience to be thinking about, specifically conspiracy theories and stuff around particle physics and stuff like that. Anyway, I know obviously Alex through Rush mainly as well. I always thought he was just a musician, but then I saw there's a Canadian show called Trailer Park Boys, and he made a cameo on there, and I saw that several years ago, and I remember thinking, man, he's got a lot of good comedic timing. Like, he's a funny guy. So I just I wrote the character with him in mind. That's why he's called Alex, actually. And then eventually it was just like, oh, why don't we see if we can kind of get him, So we reached out to him, and he said yes. I don't even think he read the script. He was just kind of like, yeah, sure, let's, I'll do this. We ended up going to his house, or one of his houses anyway, and we literally just set up the camera, sort of, he was quite nervous, which is funny because he's spent his life, rocking out in front of like 40,000 people or whatever at a time. And he's, but acting is not his forte. So he had a lot of questions. He was very nervous. He asked me a lot of questions, sent me a lot of emails beforehand. And then, we had to, when we did it, we literally had to go essentially a couple of lines at a time. But, he loosened up, and, he gave it his all, and he was hard on himself, but I think he really did a great job. And I'm really happy that he was able to do that part.
His character reminds me of the kind of guy that if you obviously make another feature or something in a completely different area, he could be the guy who knows somebody. He'd be like a recurring character in your filmography, like just randomly sprinkled in something. And I think it's like that energy that he brought to it. Like you said, there's a sense of timing. There's obviously a little recognition, because when I saw him, I knew immediately who he was. And yet he was clearly doing something that I had never really seen him do, outside of course, like some cameos and small appearances and like Trailer Park Boys, for instance. Like, yeah, it works. It works. I was thrilled to see him. And so thanks for, shedding a little light on how that came to be and all that. I think that's really cool.
Thanks. Like, I'm really glad it worked out. He was, like I said, he was nervous. I was less nervous. I thought, yeah, no, he's going to do really well. And I think he did. I'm happy that you noticed. And
it may not be in Rodrigo's thought process to do that, but I like Blake's idea that, because everybody knows an old man who wants to talk about crazy shit with people. So you can just have any movie where you call up the guy on the phone. He's like, oh yeah, let me tell you about that conspiracy.
I like that idea. Actually, I really like that idea.
Okay, good.
That's a cool idea.
Special thanks to Blake in the future credits.
There you go. That's it.
Back to some of the aspects of this movie, without spoiling too much. I know it's teased in the trailer, but can you say what maybe was the inspiration behind the creature designs, if you will, in the movie?
Yeah, I had this idea. I was stuck on the idea of this entity, sort of in a Lovecraftian way, trying to enter into the material world. The world of matter, physical world in the human sense. And so I kind of was tripping on this idea of like how it would do that. It was trying to use this machine. There was a scientific component to it. And then there was another component to it, like an occult component to it of how he could, come in. And so it was about visualizing how this entity would interpret flesh or try to clothe itself in human skin and bone. And I guess the idea that he's kind of doesn't understand how the human body works. And so there's like faces where there shouldn't be, and the mouth is not quite what it should be. And there's openings and things where there shouldn't be openings. That was sort of the concept as I spoke to it with Daniel Baker, who was our effects man. And we just kind of riffed off of that and created, he's the one who sketched that out and created this creature. I was quite happy with it because when I wanted to see something that I had never really seen before, and I think we achieved that.
And true to the current AI with giving people extra fingers and weird mouths, I guess, it wouldn't quite get it just right. So faces would be on the sides of bodies and stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good comparison. This was obviously before AI, but the whole thing about not getting hands right and all these little digits and details that's basically it. Yeah.
So even cosmic entities can screw it up when they try to incorporate AI. But so kind of in a macro sense, is there any advice you give to some aspiring filmmakers, to some folks who are just horror lovers that are trying to jump in, whether it's to expose horror to new generations, whether through filmmaking, through writing, through anything, any kind of larger advice you'd give folks?
Yeah, sure. Lots of advice. I mean, I'm a filmmaker, so I'll stick more to filmmaking. Filmmaking is very different from other art forms in the sense that you can't really practice it. Like, if you're a writer, you can write 10 short stories, and then the 11th one is the one you send to a magazine that you show to your friends. Or if you're a painter, you can do the same thing, pretty much any art form. But film, you can get a camera and shoot in your backyard, but that's not really, unless you have a very specific concept that incorporates your backyard, you're not really making a film, you're practicing shots and so on. So making a movie, it's a kind of like you have to kind of get it right, or as right as possible, without kind of knowing what you're doing. So I would encourage people to explore the short film format as much as possible, so they can get a handle of, how the not only how the shot works in the camera and so on and so forth, but how to, essentially how you're directing actors, how you're editing that footage and scoring it, and how you're incorporating sound design into it. And there's just so much that goes into it that, you literally could take the exact same footage, give it to 10 different people, and they come up with 10 different stories, even working off the same script. They just come up with 10 different movies. So it's very important to try and get some practice in there. And short films is the only way that you're going to do that. I would also say, with respect to the short film format, is a lot of people, the short film format sort of lends itself very, very easily to comedy. And a lot of people, even people who make horror films, they end up making kind of comedies or knock-knock jokes, essentially, dressed up as a horror movie. But I would say try and be more ambitious. If you have a short film, you got 10 minutes, you got 5 minutes, you got 15 minutes tops, pretty much. Try to scare someone in that time. See if you can do it. That's a challenge that's worthy of any filmmaker. So I would say that as well. I would encourage filmmakers to explore acting a little bit, which is very important, because you could be like me, where you get on the set and you know all the technical aspects. You obviously know the camera, you know the lenses, you know what you want to see. Maybe you have a good sense of music. Maybe you know your lighting. Maybe you know all these technical aspects. But when you're dealing with a human being who's acting and you're trying to get a performance out of them, that's an entirely different thing altogether. It's completely different. They're not a piece of equipment. It's a different language. You need to speak to them, and every actor has their own language. So even a short course in acting will open the door to what the reality and what the world of an actor is like. And if you're planning to be a filmmaker, you really need to understand that. If you do not understand drama, it doesn't matter what you're doing, what kind of movie you're doing. If you don't understand drama, then you'll never be able to bring any level of humanity to your stories. And that's what all stories require, no matter what kind of story it is. Those are a few things I would say, aside from obviously watch a lot of movies. If you're a filmmaker, watch a lot of movies. If you're a writer, read a lot of books. If you're a painter, well, watch a lot of painting and a lot of other people's paintings. Just immerse yourself in your art of choice.
Sound advice for sure. And as someone who's done it, like you said, since 1997, correct, is when Rue Morgue first launched?
Yeah, I launched it October 29th of 1997. Yeah,
and it's still a very strong brand, like I said, to genre folks all around. And again, check out The Breach, which is across VOD platforms as well as Hoopla. I know we're going to have a link tree in our show notes on paperstreetpodcast.com. Did you want to mention you had like a CD combo deal, I believe?
Yeah, that's right. We're doing a Breach Blu-ray and CD combo with a limited edition old card. That's on pre-order right now. If you definitely send you the link for that. But there's also a US Blu-ray that's out right now. So folks can definitely get it either of those two ways.
All right, that's the end of the interview proper, and we will jump into the Rapid Fire 15, and we will keep it rapid since there's a time crunch here. But basically, as I told Rodrigo, it's a bit like the Proust questionnaire on Inside the Actor's Studio. So we'll jump in real quick with just a bunch of horror-tailored questions, definitely for Rodrigo here. Question number 1 on the Rapid Fire 15, what movie do you think you've seen the most in your life?
I think it might be Amadeus by Milos Forman, or it could be Blue Velvet by David Lynch.
Rock solid choices. Rock solid. All right. Number 2, what's the first film that really scared you or stuck with you or maybe even gave you nightmares?
The very, very first thing I remember seeing that completely traumatized me would have been the Drop of Water segment from Mario Bava's Black Sabbath. I would have seen that movie when I was very young, probably around 6 years old. It definitely traumatized me.
Love it. And again, some of these are just tailored to you with horror. They're not all going to be horror, but because of the nature of you, we kept a few of them in the horror realm. So question 3, what's your favorite horror movie franchise?
Horror movie franchise. Ooh, that's a good one. Geez, that's really putting me on the spot. So what are well, definitely not Halloween or Friday the 13th or anything like that. It's not really into those ones. I mean, I really like Exorcist and Exorcist 3. Is that considered I hate Exorcist 2. So, I mean, is that a franchise enough? I think
I mean, it's tricky when you say franchise because the batting averages get wildly different. There's usually a great one and some bad ones, but I would say, Exorcist has a decent batting average overall.
Yeah, I'll go with The Exorcist.
All right. Number 4 is, what is your favorite horror movie subgenre?
Horror movie subgenre. Probably possession movies. I have a soft spot for possession movies.
I can get easily sucked in as well. I'm with you there.
Yeah, it's weird because I'm not a religious person, and I don't really like, I don't subscribe to any of the ideas of Catholicism or anything of that nature. And yet, and possession movies are generally rooted in that mythology. But there's definitely something powerful and interesting about demonic possession. I don't know why. Maybe it's something I grew up with, but I find it quite fascinating.
Similar to the What Gave You Nightmares, is there a movie or a TV episode or a song or something that always brings you to tears, makes you really emotional?
A song, yes. There's a song called My Face by Peter Murphy. And that always has this I always have very, very strong associations with that song. I believe I was listening to that song when I was trying to find the sound for my movie, The Last Will and Testament of Rosalind Leigh. And then I looked on the CD credits and I saw that Peter had worked with a musician named Merjan Dede. And that's when I called Merjan, and he did the music for my movie.
That's awesome that it works like that, just sort of working the chain toward your own creative endeavor. I like that.
Yeah. Nice.
Number 6, who is your favorite cinematographer? There's kind of a second part of this question if you don't have a particular favorite. It could just be, what is a movie that you think of if someone said, I want something that is just loaded with great cinematography? So you could take that either way. Right.
It's Ingmar Bergman's cinematographer. The last name's Nyqvist. Oh gosh, what's his first name? I can't believe I'm blanking out on that one. Sven, that's it. Sven Nyqvist. He's Ingmar Bergman's cinematographer. I think that guy is his cinema is like a dream. It's like looking at images from the unconscious mind.
Excellent answer.
Yeah, good answer. And what would you say is your favorite example of practical makeup, special effects / gore effects in a movie?
Yeah. Well, I really have a soft spot for 2 movies in particular. It would be Carpenter's The Thing, like Rob Bottin's makeup effects there. What can you say about that? It's just so perfect and used so well in that movie. It's so outrageous, and to this day, you're just in awe of what he created there. And also Romero's Day of the Dead. That was Savini's magnum opus in terms of his work there. It was just so gory, so excessive, and so entertaining. I think those 2 movies are really hard to beat.
Yeah, solid choices again.
For number 8, you've already mentioned some heavy hitters. I'm just going to throw that out there, but I'm going to ask you, who would you say is your all-time favorite director?
That would be probably Stanley Kubrick. Actually, it would be Stanley Kubrick or David Lynch. It's really kind of down the middle. Those 2 guys, to me, they represent the opposite sides of filmmaking. Kubrick is very rational, approaches films like a game of chess. And David Lynch is extremely intuitive, and his films are very dreamlike. And he's famous for saying that he doesn't understand them and he doesn't want to understand. And so I find that they're the kind of the polar opposites, the sort of right brain, left brain. The rational mind that wants to do something very specific to you, and the intuitive mind that just wants to lose itself in a dream. And I think together those guys probably represent what I would imagine is the goal of filmmaking.
So the follow-up question is often just the favorite film by them. But since you mentioned Kubrick and Lynch, what's your favorite film by both Kubrick and by David Lynch?
Well, Kubrick, I've watched all of his movies so many times. Right now, the movie that I enjoy the most, it would be Barry Lyndon. It's the movie that he did right after A Clockwork Orange. And he shot it with available lighting and these, NASA lenses and stuff. It's a period piece. And as far as David Lynch is concerned, I really, right now, the movie that I love the most is Mulholland Drive. It's just a very, it's like a waking nightmare, and it's beautiful.
Well, transitioning away from sort of the film side of things, you had mentioned earlier that you've done a lot of reading, particularly in the horror realm. Do you have a particular favorite horror novelist? And if so, if you could nail it down to like one or two, because I understand it's hard to choose. Do you have a favorite book by that or those authors?
Well, one of my favorite authors would have to be H.P. Lovecraft. I know that, when you read Lovecraft, his early work is very different from his later work. And he just had a flair and a deep understanding, I think, and kind of like a genuine love for the macabre. You know what I mean? He was just a very macabre minded person. He just would create these scenarios and basically put you in the gloomiest part of them, and have sort of walk you through these very morbid scenes and stuff. And his imagination, he had this cosmic aspect to his imagination. He had a very sort of big sort of bird's eye view. So I really I've come to appreciate his work more and more over the years. And he's not really known for novels. It's once his short stories. So I would say his later short stories, the stuff he published sort of later on in his life, I would say probably the last 10 years of his life. Definitely that's something I connect with. I mean, beyond that, I always trying to discover new people. I would say though now I read less genre, and I'm more I read more literary classics and stuff like that. I'm always thinking in terms of horror and how things can be adapted into that particular vocabulary.
Right. A follow-up, someone whose work may be most adapted in genre. Do you have a favorite work by author Stephen King?
Yes, I love Stephen King's. My favorite would be Different Seasons. His book, Different Seasons. It's sort of 4 novellas. I believe they've all been made into movies. With Apt Pupil, The Shawshank Redemption, and Stand By Me. And that's a special book that I've always really enjoyed by Stephen King. I don't enjoy all of his stuff. That stuff, that book in particular, made an impression on me.
Okay. Doing a little bit of a shift. Do you have a favorite kind of concert that you've attended, or is there any kind of concert you did attend that really just stands out as like a definitive experience for a live performance?
Well, for me, I have to be really connected to the music. But there was one concert in particular that I didn't know the music very well, and it really blew me away. The concert was by a band called Fever Ray. It's a woman, actually. She's from Sweden, I believe. She has another band called The Knife that she does with her brother. And this Fever Ray show, I don't know when I saw it. I think it's around 2011, somewhere in there. And it was very witchy, very pagan, very dark, very gloomy, and super creative. It cast a long spell, I would say, that particular show.
Those are often the best shows. Always. You got to chase those. I feel like they're not the ones that are always just heavily marketed and everything. You end up at a show like that and it sticks, and you want more. You got to get more. I know how that goes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And finally, what would be Rodrigo's dream project to make, be it to write, to direct, however you want to get it across the finish line? Is there a genre, is there a period, is there a style of something you'd love to tackle, an IP you'd like to adapt? What would be your dream project?
Man, my dream projects are sitting in my desk drawers. I have so many of them. I have these really crazy scripts. Some of them are too crazy. And I just want to bring some of those to life. As a matter of fact, some of them are on the verge of becoming graphic novels, because I don't know if they have a future in film. But I definitely have, very kind of renegade scripts or outlaw scripts. And they're just very difficult to get made. But I love the stories. I love the stories they tell. And, if you were to say, hey, here's whatever, an unlimited budget. What's your dream project? I'd just reach into my desk and pull one out for you.
Well, here's hoping you get at least one of them in some capacity, whether it's via, visual storytelling like a graphic novel or a short film or even a feature. So we're pulling for you again as fans of this and The Breach, Last Will and Testament of Rosalind Leigh. We want to say you passed flying colors. Not that there was a point system or anything, but the rapid fire is concluded. You did it. And in an effort to get you out of here on time, we will conclude by saying once more, just The Breach out on VOD platforms. We'll have, again, his link tree is in the show notes at paperstreetpodcast.com. And Rodrigo, again, wish you all the best. And I want folks to check this movie out. And again, we'll put as many places to find it as are available currently. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you, guys. I really appreciate this, and I appreciated your questions. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope your listeners get into the movie. And if not, well, there'll be another one coming down the pipe sooner than later. So thanks again.
No, certainly. We hope you keep it as weird as that desk drawer currently looks.
I will.
more Lovecraftian cosmic stuff all day. We'll take it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you again, Rodrigo. Take care.
See you later.